Hi, BookTube friends. This is Sonia from An Enthusiastic Reader. I'm here today to do a Friday Reads. It is July 15th, 2022, and it's been a few weeks since I've done a wrap-up of what I've been reading. So I thought I'd hit some of the highlights of things that I've read over the last few weeks. Let's get started. The first book I want to talk about is The Last Picture Show by Larry McMurtry. Now, this was I don't know if it's a group read, but Ollie Criminal. I'm going to leave his channel below. Criminale chose The Last Picture Show. He did a really cool book tag like a couple months ago about your birth year tag, and I ended up doing a video about 1966, and one of the books that was written in 66 is The Last Picture Show by Larry McMurtry. So he was talking about a group read on his Discord, which I have checked out, and I thought I'd go ahead and since it was inspired by my video, I should read the book again. I read this a long time ago. I want to say I've read it a couple of times, but I don't know if that's actually true. When I was reading it this last time, there were a lot of plot points that I did not remember from my previous encounters with this book. The book revolves around this small town in East Texas called Thalia, which is an imaginary town in Larry McMurtry's universe of Westerns. And it's a small Western town, very poor, but there's a huge class distinction between the country club set and then the kids that are from the blue collar families, and a lot of oil work is going on around there. And so the two main characters of the book are Sonny and Dwayne, although there are some other very prominent characters, and they are in high school, but they live in a boarding house. They're estranged from their families for various reasons, mostly having to do with family dynamics and or like alcoholism or just being too impoverished to raise these kids. So the town, there's like a cast of characters in this town that kind of rally and take care of these boys. In a sense, they give them jobs and feed them, and like the waitress at the cafe takes good care of them as kind of a motherly figure. And so they're trying to get through their last year in high school. Korea is going on at the time, the Korean conflict, so they think they may be drafted or may have to go fight in Korea. So that's what it's about. There's a lot of sexual situations. It's mostly about kind of these, this coming of age of these two young men, and the girl that they both love, JC, they both love her, but Dwayne is dating her, and when will they have sex, or if they will. And my main problem with this book in general is that it's pretty misogynistic and very racist. And also there is a character named Billy who is obviously intellectually impaired, and so he just sweeps. I don't know if he's autistic or, what his cognitive disability is, but anyway, the characters in the town take care of him. But then these boys, there's a lot of drinking in this book, and so a bunch of teenage boys get really drunk and do things that they shouldn't be doing, and there's a lot of like houses of prostitution, and they're always going to sleep with prostitutes when they're kids. And then the coach's wife is lonely and sad, and so she ends up having an affair with Sonny, and because she is so sad and so neglected by her husband. And so all of the women characters, except for the waitress, are all either tragic figures or manipulate. And so that is something that I grapple with. I enjoyed the book. I did not know it was the first in a series of 5 books about these characters. I am interested in reading the next book to see if I get along with that universe that McMurtry has built. So I'm glad I reread it. It was a very short read. I think it took me a day to read. It's just incredibly short, and it's sad. I think maybe the ending's a bit contrived, but all in all, I gave it 4 stars, probably closer to 3.5 stars in reality. The next book I'd like to talk about is Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen. I was talking to a friend about this, and I think we concluded that even a bad Austen novel is better than most novels. So Northanger Abbey it wasn't a bad novel, but it definitely is the lesser of all the 6 novels. It was a little bit, the plot was, I had a little bit of trouble with the plot, especially near the end, the twist that comes and what happens when she is cast out from her intended lover's family, just all of a sudden for no good reason. I thought that the reasons for that came out later were really very weak. So, and I thought that I just don't know. I think her other novels are so much more crafted and like really gel together and are cohesive, and this wasn't as cohesive for me. What I did like about it is the fact that the main character is a reader, and she's read a lot of sensationalistic romances, and so she has psyched herself out in a sense by having read some of these novels with a lot of intrigue, murder, drama, ghosts, and so she is going to be going to this house, Northanger Abbey, and she is totally psyched herself into and frightened herself into thinking that there's a lot of things going on in that house that aren't actually going on. And I did like that aspect of it. I think a lot of the core things that you love about an Austen novel are there, but they just don't quite gel. So I don't know that I'll be reading it again, and I don't know that I would seek out an adaptation of that. And speaking of adaptations, I am not watching the new Netflix adaptation of Persuasion. I have heard so many things and read all of the reviews, and it just sounds terrible to me. And I'm just declaring it now that this is not something I am going to give any of my attention to. I do enjoy reading the critics who are dragging on the movie, though. Speaking of Jane Austen, I read a very short biography of Jane Austen by Carol Shields, who was a Canadian novelist and who has since died. She is the author of one of my favorite books, The Stone Diaries. I have read many of her novels, if not all of them, and she is a novelist that I really miss. And so when I found out that she wrote this biography of Jane Austen in the 1990s, I really wanted to read it along with reading Northanger Abbey. So I got it from the library. This was great. And I really enjoyed the way that Carol Shields talks about Jane Austen's, the facts of her life, and then also analyzes and talks about aspects of the novels that do gel with the facts of Austen's life, or that you cannot assume that every single thing in Austen's novels are somehow taken from her life, that she had a bigger, broader imagination than that. And even though she was not able to make a match and get married, and she had kind of a somewhat sad, lonely existence within a family, she still had the ability to write these novels. And there were just certain aspects of the biography that I really liked. Jane's early reading life, talking about the novels that they know she read, and her relationship to her sister over the decades, a major disappointment in love that she had, where she thought she was going to make a love match and marriage, and then it didn't happen because she didn't have a strong enough dowry, and the man that she, I guess, was in love with found someone else. Then she is proposed to, what am I trying to say? She was proposed to by someone, and she says yes, but then she thinks about it overnight and just rescinds her acceptance the very next day. And that caused kind of a scandal and a great shame in her family, that why would she build him up and say yes and then decide that she can't do it? I really enjoyed learning about how she sold Northanger Abbey to a publisher, and that was the first novel she sold, but they didn't publish it. And so 6 years go by and they still haven't published her novel yet. And she writes to them kind of demanding that they give it back to her. And they say, well, we will sue you if you try to get this published anywhere else. And it's our novel to publish when and where we would like to, but you can buy it back for £10, which was the amount of the advance that she originally received. And she didn't have the money. And no one offered, none of her rich brothers and her parents, no one offered to buy that novel back. And so she was able to buy it back after she had some financial success with Sense and Sensibility and Pride and Prejudice, which I just felt like was a major victory that she was able to buy that back from them, and shame on them for not giving it back if they weren't going to publish it. And another thing that really struck me was her lack of agency. Her parents decide to move from where they live to go to Bath and move there, and she doesn't want to do that, and they had to give up almost all of their possessions because it would be too hard to transport them to Bath, and she had to give up so much that she loved. And there was a whole lovely chapter about that transition and how she just couldn't decide. She didn't have the ability to decide where she could live, even as, well into her 20s and 30s, that she had no say in her existence because of her marital status. And then I was happy to learn about, what happiness she did get out of her success in sales and her own money for a short time. And then, of course, the sad decline of her life as she probably has cancer, but they don't know for sure. And then she dies so early. So I really enjoyed it. I wanted to read you just a little snippet of what Carol Shields had to say about Jane Austen and women who read her. The young often read Austen's novels as love stories. Later, more knowing readers respond to their intricate structures, their narrative drive, their quiet insistence that we keep turning over the page even though we know the ending, which is invariably one of reconciliation and a projection of future happiness in the form of marriage. But what did marriage mean in the context of those novels? Not a mere exchange of vows repeated in church, marriage reached beyond its moment of rhetoric and gestured eloquently and also innocently toward the only pledge a young woman was capable of giving. She had one chance in her life to say, "I do." And these words rhyme psychologically with the phrase, "I am, I exist." Just thought that was just a really astute observation about the place where Jane Austen was in her life and during the times, and what a woman's ability was to make any kind of choice for herself, and to choose to marry was like her big choice, her big chance, and how sad that that was what she was limited to. So I highly recommend this. If I've seen a lot of people reading the Claire Tomlinson long biography of Jane Austen, and I think if you just want a snippet and a taste of what a biography would be like, you get a lot of information and a lot of really great analysis and criticism too. I've been doing a buddy read with Teresa. We're reading the Regeneration trilogy, so we have read Regeneration and The Eye in the Door. I'm not going to talk too much about the plots of these, but basically what they are is a set of characters in World War I, some of whom actually existed and some who are fictional, kind of woven in to, build out the story. So all of the events in the novel so far have been based on actual historical occurrences, and including the World War I poets who decided that they did not want to fight in the war anymore, and are making a conscientious objection to the morality of war, and then being sent to a psychiatric hospital to try and work out why they should go back, and that they aren't crazy, and that they need to reconcile themselves with the fact that no matter what their beliefs are, they need to go back to the war. And then there are other patients in this psychiatric hospital who are there for various other reasons. So you see a lot of the treatment from the psychiatrist and trying to work with these trauma patients who are, having so many flashbacks and nightmares and sleepwalking and fugue states and inability to speak and eating disorders and all of these things. There are a lot of gay characters in these novels, so there's a lot of representation for very repressed queer men, and what that was like to try and have to live in such a closeted way because it was illegal to be gay in that time period. And so there's a lot of illicit relationships between people, especially in the second novel. There's a lot of queer content in that novel as well. So it was really interesting. The second novel is about Actually, there was something called, there was a book that was the 47,000 names, which somebody was compiling all the people they thought might be gay and that they would be blackmailed and exposed. So that list was going around. And also there was a huge controversy over Oscar Wilde's play Salome and the actress who was playing the main character, and this whole crazy thing called the cult of the clitoris. That was these pamphlets going out saying, you know, only, you know, gay people are going to be going to see this play, and just really interesting and fascinating. Also, anarchists and people who wanted to kill the prime minister are woven in and created to work with the other characters in the novel. So really intricate storytelling. I guess I never really knew what these books were about, and I am so glad that we are working through them, and we will be reading The Ghost in the Road, no, The Ghost Road, next. So that's been really fulfilling. And finally, I read the novella Elena Knows, and I filmed my explanation of this in a different video, so hold on, and I'm going to splice that in right here. Finally, the last book I want to talk about is Elena Knows by Claudia Piñeiro, who is an Argentinian writer, and it was translated from the Spanish. And this was so good. This was a novella, very short. I'm sure you've heard a lot of other people talking about this because it's been going around on a lot of videos that I have seen, but it's about a main character who is in her late 50s or early 60s, I think. She has late stage Parkinson's disease, and her daughter, who she has a very prickly relationship with, is found hanging in a church, and it has been ruled a suicide, but Elena is convinced that she was murdered, and they had a common acquaintance from years ago that she thinks will be able to help her navigate finding out what happened to her daughter. And so the whole novella is about her journey, just like the physical aspects of being in that state, kind of bent over, only able to see from the waist down, not being able to see up, navigating the subway, the train, and getting in a cab, and then finding the address, and then finding this woman that she really, really wants to talk to, and then what happens from that point on. And in the meanwhile, we get the backstory of her relationship with her daughter, which was not good, and her daughter was not particularly nice to her. So it just the insights and what a person is thinking about in these little moments of struggle and just trying to live while being kind of imperiled by a disease. So I won't talk about what happens in the end. It's not really a murder mystery in any sense, but it's a much more psychological study of people who are in kind of a dire relationship and circumstance. But it was really good. I highly recommend it. If you are looking for a novella for November, for novellas in November, whatever you want to call it, put this on your list because it was really good. So thank you so much for watching this. I wanted to say that I think I'm going to take a social media break between now and Labor Day weekend. Just I feel like I need a break. There are too many things going on. I'm spending too much time online worrying about everything that's happening. And so I'm going to take a little break. I know I don't make videos as regularly as a lot of other people, but I would like to get back into it after I just step away for a little bit. And I am leaving my email address and my voxer, so if you want to contact me at any time, I'm happy to chat with you in other ways. And I probably won't be watching too many videos, but I just feel like I need to clear my head and get some more reading done and just try and grapple with everything that's going on in the world right now, which is very immense. And also we are going to get some painting done in our house. So you'll see this bookshelf over here. It's going to be painted a color. You can see I've got some samples over there on the edge, probably going to be that dark blue at the bottom. So this bookshelf is all going to be painted, and then we have some like accent wall. We have a big accent wall, and our dining room are kind of all connected, and so Most of our house is just white paint, but then we have a few accent colors. And so we're going to go really bold with some of that. And we're just trying to spruce some things up around the house and just try and just feel, you know, refreshed. And so that's something that will be happening. And maybe by the time, I doubt it, but maybe by the time I come back, this will be painted. So that's all for now. Please leave me comments and say hi. I hope you're doing well, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.